Okay, so first I'm going to show you how to get started on your slab cup. We're going to be using these tubes as our guides or our forms for our cups so that they stay nice and straight, they don't get all weird. The first thing you need to do is put a little bit of paper towel around your tube so that the clay does not stick. So not a whole bunch because you don't want to alter the shape of the tube, but just a piece, and lightly put a piece of tape. Don't make it too super tight because we want to be able to pull this off. The second thing you need to do is you will have your guide. Basically we just have an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So our piece of paper to make our cup is going to be 11 inches long, and then however tall you want it to be. I'd say probably 4 inches is as small as you can get, but everything shrinks a little bit with ceramic. So if we start at 5.5, which I have here, it's going to be a little bit shorter when we finish. So just kind of be aware of that. You'll also have your slab, which I'll have already shown you how to do. To start your slab, you need to smooth out both sides. So this side looks a little yucky. It was on the back actually. So this is going to become the inside of my cup. I'm going to take some water on one of my rib tools, which looks like this. They're called rib tools because they used to be made out of animal ribs. Not anymore. They're plastic or wood. And just kind of smooth this out gently. You don't want to move the clay around too much, but we want to just get down any of the surface texture that was caused by rolling out the clay. So this is going to become the inside of my cup. I'm going to flip it over gently. This will become the outside of my cup. So I just want to maybe spend a little bit more time on this side, making sure the texture is where I want it to be. You can choose to make the outside of your cup a texture. You can choose to make it smooth and then add decoration using the glaze or the color. But whatever you want to do, you need to start with a smooth surface. Okay, so I've smoothed it out. We have lots of options for making texture. I have little alphabet noodles, little alphabet stamps. We have regular rubber stamps that have sayings on them or pictures. Anything can become a texture. Some people like to press like a lace or a doily into it, a pencil, whatever. Anything can make a texture. You can even just use like the ends of this to create some texture. You know, there's all different options. I'm going to use one of these rollers, which will create the texture for me. But first what I want to do is lay down my template so I kind of have an idea of where my cup is going to be. Now this clay has some breaks in it because of how I rolled it. So I just want to kind of avoid those, obviously. Alright, so I'm just going to lay this down and give myself some little corner marks. So just about where my template is, so I know where to put my texture and I'm not wasting my time texturizing areas that don't need to be texturized. Okay, so this is about where my texture needs to go. I'm actually going to just do a weird angle texture. I'm not going to texturize the whole cup. I'm just going to press down like this and take it across. Okay. So I have my texture on. If I wanted to add more in there, I could. Texture is nice because when we glaze, the glaze will kind of fall into these little spots here and collect and create a new color with the glaze. Alright, so I'm going to put my template back on. And you want to make sure you do any texture before you cut your piece out so that the clay has moved and you're not changing its shape or its thickness once you get it on the form. Alright, then you're going to use a felting knife and start cutting it out. One sharp side is sharper than the other, like a real knife. So make sure you just hold your knife straight. Try not to do it at an angle, otherwise you'll get angles in your clay. And just slowly cut your piece out. Okay, you are going to need a piece of clay for the bottom of your cup, so don't just go and crumple all this up. Save this piece. I'll actually just cut it off here because I know I'm going to need this one later. The rest of this stuff I can go ahead and smush together, and I'll either use it later or I'll put it back in the clay bag. Okay, so now I have the shape or my template for my cup. I'm just gonna go ahead and wrap it carefully around my tube. So just kind of lay it on there towards the bottom so that you have one edge that is flat. Try to do this up here so you can see. So now I'm at where they meet. And now to join two pieces of clay together, you need to do something called scoring and slipping. You also want to be aware that if you're handling this and you do have a texture on there, that you could bump your texture down. So just be careful depending on what kind of texture you have. So what I'm going to do here is score, which means I'm roughing up the surface of the clay. So I'm just going to move this back a little bit. Score the edges, because you want to kind of think about this like as Velcro. Velcro sticks together because it has two rough surfaces that kind of intertwine. That's what we're creating with our clay here. And for the purpose of this project, we are just going to use a little bit of water to make our slip. Slip is really just gunky clay. I really don't want to get the slip out because I don't want our cups to become super messy. So we're just going to put a little bit of water on one of the sides here, and then we're going to basically Velcro them together. So you just kind of push gently so that they go together pretty well. Some people like to create the seam as part of the cup. Some people may want it to make like completely disappear. That's going to be whatever your preference is. But we have lots of tools that can kind of help you create it, hide it. Also, if you're adding a handle onto it, a lot of people will put the handle right here so that the seam is kind of hidden underneath the handle. Okay, you can also see that my texture has kind of disappeared from this section, so I would probably add a handle right in this area, which I will show you how to do later. Okay, so now I have my seam nice and smooth. See, the texture still there. Now I need to make the bottom. So what I'm going to do is bring over my extra piece of clay and simply set my piece on there. I'm going to carefully cut around the bottom. Again, try to keep your knife straight so that you're not cutting at a weird angle. Just straight up and down. Okay, move it off. You can see it already kind of stuck there. Apart. All right, so again, you need to score and slip. I have these little tools. I only have a couple of them for each table, but they're really good. You can use a knife, you can use a fork, anything to just kind of rough the surface up. A little pin tool. Okay, so go around, rough up the surface so we're creating our Velcro. I'm going to go to the bottom of my cup. I'm going to rough it up. I'm going to add a little bit of water to one part, so I'll just put a little bit on the bottom. Not a whole ton of water. We don't want to make this sloppy. And then we're going to go ahead and set our cup on. And again, just kind of twist it so you're almost like screwing it together. Then you need to come down and push it using your finger or a tool. There's lots of tools that will help keep things nice and straight and clean, so use those to your advantage. Make sure you're not pressing right here in the center, because that's just one little slab of clay. if the clay starts pulling away from you, it's because your hands are too dry. So you don't want them to be soaking wet, but you don't want to start moving the clay too much, otherwise you'll get some thin areas and some thick areas, and that's not really the look we're going for. So smooth it out carefully, and we have a cup. Okay, so we can clean up more later. At this point, we need to pull this out because our clay is going to start shrinking as soon as it starts drying, and if it gets locked in there, then your piece is ruined. We can't get it out. So basically, put your hand inside the tube and you kind of have to wiggle. Gently, eventually come out. There we go. So my paper towel kind of stayed on the inside, not a big deal. You can just pull that out. So now we have a cup. Now you're just gonna go around and clean everything up. You really need to get down into the cup too and smooth out in there. So any of the long tools like this would be good to go down in there and just kind of get things down. Make sure you're putting your clay. You also want to smooth around the edge because this is going to be your actual drinking edge, so you don't want it to be super sharp, otherwise you'll cut your lip. So you're just going to smooth all that out. Okay, and then just keep working around, smoothing out the inside. Making sure your seam, if you can kind of see that, is nice and smooth on the inside. So we'll take something like this and just kind of smooth it. Make sure you're supporting the clay with your other hand because it's still really malleable. Get down in there. As long as your seams are sealed and you glaze it correctly, you will be able to use this to actually drink out of. So make sure you take your time. Okay, so at this point I would stop and let it firm up overnight. Then we can go back and clean up any little pieces of clay that are on it. You also want to make sure you put your name on the bottom and your hour. So you can do your initials and then a 1 or 2 or whatever, or you can put your whole name with alphabet letters, whatever you want to do so that I know that it's yours, please. And your hour would be really helpful. When you're done today, you're going to have a bag, and we don't want to completely seal it because we do want to let some of the air start getting in there and drying it up a tad. So you're just going to put your piece in your bag like this. Give it a loose tie. We don't want it super tight because we do want it to dry out a little. And then you'll bring it to wherever I tell you to bring it. Just make sure your name's on it and be super careful because we don't want any of these to get crushed overnight. All right, there we go.